Hi, and welcome to Cooking with Kids. I'm Sarah, the Children Needs Services Librarian with the Spruce Grove Public Library. And in this program, you're going to meet my family, my husband Dave, and my kids, Sutty, Monty, Ozzy, and Theo. Cooking with kids can be a crazy experience, as you may have already found out yourselves from doing this with younger ones at home. But the memories they make and the hands-on learning that they take away from being involved in food prep and meal planning can last a lifetime. It can also lead to a foundation of healthy eating habits. So more suggestions and tips for this can be found on Canada's Food Guide online. So go ahead and enjoy the show.
Anyways, hey everybody, welcome to Cooking with Kids. Today I got my assistant Ozzy here helping me. We're going to make a muffin recipe today called Apple Crunch Muffins. It uses kind of just a good base for general muffins, and then we do a few kind of different things with it. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is make our crumble topping that's going to go on top. So first thing we need is 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar. So this is 1/3 of a cup. And brown sugar kind of sticks together. So, 1/3. And 2/3. Now the next thing we need is 1/3 of a cup of flour. So that's one of these again. I'll just grab my flour, it's in here. And we need a couple of tablespoons of margarine or butter, depending on which one you use. Let's try that. And apparently I set my oven ahead of time to 400 degrees so that it's warm by the time we're getting going. So we'll use that in a little bit. So the next thing we need to do is cut in the margarine. So if you've ever made like a apple crumble or a that type of recipe, it's kind of the same thing for the topping. So we use that. See how it chops into little bits? See that, Ozzy? Can you do that for me? You're gonna just smush and smush and smush lots. And then when it gets stuck, let me know and we can scrape it out. Yeah. Yeah, smush it into the flour lots. Smush it into the flour. And it'll push it out. There you go. Yeah, it's kind of sticky bits of margarine, kind of getting chopped up smaller and smaller and mixing with the flour and the sugars. What do you think? That about good? A little bit more? Okay, keep going. You gotta squish it pretty good. Getting it all off. Here, let me scrape it off again. Bits all mixed in there. Get the little bits of margarine nice and fine, because they'll end up melting really nicely on top of the muffins. So that's all we got. Alright, so we're going to set that aside into a smaller bowl here, so we can just use this one again. So first thing we need is 3 cups of flour. And this is a 1 cup measuring cup, hey Ozzy? And so we'll chuck it in there. Let me bring that over for you, so that you can help it, okay? Can you count for me? What is that? 1.
2.
3. Okay, so that's what we need for flour for now. And then we need 1/2 cup of sugar. Okay? And sugar is one of those things you can decide how much you want, how much you don't want. The recipe calls for 1/2 cup of white sugar. You can use brown sugar if you want. If you want, you can substitute things like honey in. Yeah, just all depends on what you like nowadays in the modern age. Okay, so there's 1/2 cup. Okay. And then we need 6 teaspoons of baking powder. You gonna scoop these out for me, or do you want to count? What are you gonna do? You gonna scoop them? Okay. Just when you're doing a teaspoon, get it way down in there, so it's nice and full, and then you put it up to the top here, and you scrape it off. And that's one, okay? One. Good job. That's 6. And then we need half a teaspoon of salt. And we need 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. As with many things Apple, cinnamon tends to go quite well with. Let me just scrape that off. Don't want too much in there. Alright, and we'll just mix that up a little bit. And that's all of our dry ingredients. And then the next things are our wet ingredients. So, as with all the recipes, we'll do this one dairy-free. You can feel free to add milk instead of water. Doesn't really matter. Just kind of personal preferences. It does make things a little richer and creamier and that sort of thing. A couple of eggs. Where's our eggs? Here's one. You gonna do this one? Alright, crack it on the side a little bit. A bit more. What do you think? Now hold it over the bowl. Here. Stick your fingers right in there. Where were you tapping? We lost it. I think it's right there. Hold it over. Yeah. Polar apart. Any shell in there? Nope. Yeah. So we got a couple of eggs. Doesn't look like we have any shells. So, and then 1.5 cups of water is what it calls for. Like with most pastries, you try to have fairly cold water. So run it a little bit if you need. Just make sure you got nice cold water or milk from the fridge. So we have our 1.5 cups. Break that up a little bit. So when we add it to the dry ingredients, it's not all in a big clump. Clumps of eggs. Okay, so the last thing is our margarine. You don't want to do it too melty. You want to just soften it. Yeah, that way it kind of acts more like a glue inside the batter here. So, all right, so we got our margarine out of the microwave. It's softened. I kind of smushed it up here a little bit with the whisk, and we'll add it into the other liquid ingredients. And we'll just mix that up a little bit. Okay, so now it's time to mix everything together. So we have our dry ingredients, we have our wet ingredients, and the biggest thing is we don't want to overmix it. If you overmix it, then the batter just kind of falls flat and it doesn't have a very nice texture to it. So when picking your egg beater, depending on your style, if you have this kind, or if you have things like the Sunbeams, things like that where they have the two, they still have different kind of thicknesses of the mixing ends. This one's for liquidier stuff, this is thicker stuff, so we're going to go with the thicker stuff, as we're going to have today. Alright, so we can add a little bit in, and we'll just start it nice and slow. So, that's literally basically going to be it. We're going to take our spatula here and scrape the sides. Looks like our batter is just a little bit thick, so I'm just going to add a touch more water. Now, like I said earlier, this is a good batter that's can be used with lots of different things. You can make blueberry muffins, rhubarb muffins, cranberry muffins. Just depends on what you like to have or make. So today we're going to do apple muffins. Our next process is we're going to actually layer some applesauce in with the batter kind of in the muffin tin itself. So we'll get those set up and yeah, then we'll go from there. So here we got our batter, we have some applesauce, and we have our crumble topping. And here I got some canola oil that we're going to use and rub around to make it non-stick. You can use the spray stuff if you want, whatever you usually use to keep things from sticking. You can do it with a little brush. I usually just grab a piece of saran wrap, put it around my hand, and get it in there so you can, mostly just a time thing. And we'll get our first tray here good to go so we can get it in the oven. They take about 20 minutes to cook. So while that's happening, then we can get our next tray ready here. So grab a spoon. You want to put a bit in the tin. Maybe half full if that. Maybe a little less. Now we just want to double check, see how they're all sitting, see if we need any more in any of them. There's a couple here that need just a little bit more. There we go. So there's our first batch there of what we do. And now it's time for some applesauce. Don't be concerned about too much applesauce being in there, as far as if it's going to make things kind of liquidy and not make them bake. A lot of the applesauce juice and things does absorb into the muffin, and it's not really a concern. So I'd say quantity-wise in each one of these, what I'm putting in is about a level tablespoon. Put a little less if that's what you want, a little more. And a little bit more of that one. What do you think? Does that look good?
Good.
Yeah? Excellent. So now what we're actually going to do is we're going to put a little bit more batter on top, and then we'll do the crumble. You don't need as much as we did the first go round. You just kind of need a little blob. Now the biggest thing, more than if they're too full or too little, is that they're the same, so they cook the same. What do you think? Do they look about the same size? Maybe a little more on that one. What do you think?
Good.
Looks pretty good? Okay. We'll call it about even, I think. Okay. So we'll save that for the next batch here. My personal thing is when I'm baking, if I'm bothering to bake, I usually try to make more so I don't have to bake as often. So I'd probably recommend doubling this batch if you're wanting about 3 dozen or so. We filled these ones maybe just a little bit too full, but this recipe right here makes about 1.5 dozen, kind of in the current state here. So, but yeah, and then you can always throw some in the freezer and pull them when you feel hungry for muffins. Anyways, so then we have our crumble, kind of here. Do you want to help me with this one, Ozzy? You gonna put some on for me? So here's what we're gonna do, okay? So we just take a little bit in our hand and we sprinkle it on. If you put too much, then it just won't stick. So you just want a little bit. Now you can use whatever type of applesauce you want. Stuff from the store works great. This applesauce is some applesauce we made in the fall that we picked off my brother's tree. I think I might have used it in a recipe from before. Ooh, yes. Last month with the smoothies we used a little bit of this applesauce. So, what do you think? Is that good enough? So now we're going to throw these in the oven. They take 18 to 20 minutes at 400 degrees. we only got about enough for about a half batch. So the biggest thing when doing a half batch on a thing like this is you don't clump them all together. So you'll kind of space them out. So here we got our muffins out of the oven. Apparently I filled the first batch up a little bit too full because the caps were about there in the tin. So I guess if you make them like an appropriate size, like a normal human, then you end up with 2 dozen, not about 1.5 dozen. I did want to point out a difference though. So this one here is from our second batch here. That was the partial full tin. Once again, more the appropriate size. But if you notice, even on the same cook times, that one of our muffin tins is steel and the other muffin tin is aluminum. The aluminum ones are like this, that even if you cook them a little bit longer, you don't end up really brown, you don't end up with burning, that sort of thing. Whereas these ones, they look nice and there they go, but at the same time, if it was a couple minutes longer, then they would have started to burn. So if you're looking at buying tins, I do recommend aluminum ones because they just come out better. Same thing goes for cookie trays. Yeah, so that's one thing. So as I mentioned as well, these ones have applesauce in the middle. If you wanted to do blueberry muffins, you can use the same batter recipe. Just before you start putting them in the tin, you just stir some frozen blueberries into them. And that would make a fantastic blueberry muffin. Another nice filling that would be really good with these is like if you boiled some rhubarb with a little bit of sugar in it and made like a rhubarb puree, then that would also be amazing. So, what do you think? Should we try them? Yeah? Okay. So, these are still pretty warm. They just came out of the oven about 5 minutes ago. But yeah, as you can see, there's kind of your layer of applesauce in there. And kind of spills off the side and things. It really doesn't matter. They are freaking delicious. So, all the best. Hopefully you try some of these type of recipes and have fun while you're doing it. You gonna taste test it? Be careful, it's hot. It might be a little warm still, okay?
It's not warm.
It's okay? Alright. What do you think?
Thank you for watching Cooking with Kids, brought to you by the Spruce Grove Public Library. We hope that you enjoyed this recipe and are inspired to try it yourself at home. New videos will drop on YouTube and on Facebook on the first Friday of the month throughout the winter. For further information on this and other exciting programs we are running during the winter-spring season, visit our website at sgpl.ca. So join us again soon for more tasty makes. Stay safe and have fun in the kitchen.